country and state. It's a toughie. Even if you're 100% correct, it's not something you can win with right away. So I think it's the important thing to me is to get the ball rolling and to create a kind of momentum for change that will allow you to systematically start digging deeper and deeper and deeper and getting at some of the more systemic reasons for these divisions in your community.
You always looking to see things in a new way when you're writing, and so I have a pretty big question for you here. I am a transplanted Midwesterner. I come from New Orleans. And what would you suggest is a way to start to reframe problems in a place that has been destroyed on so many levels, faces racial issues, criminal issues, education, everything that you've touched on in much deeper ways than here. So what would you suggest to someone who's in despair?
Yeah. Waiting for the softball. Somebody asked me how I think the lights are going to be. Adrian Peterson.
That's no ball at all.
A lot of no, seriously, I'm very question. Okay, here's what I think about when I think about New Orleans. What we lack when it comes to these kinds of reform efforts and this kind of framing, we lack success stories. The reason I told that, the reason I was at charter school in Bronx, it was a profoundly moving experience. I was as moved as I had ever been in doing any act of reporting in my career as a journalist. And the reason that I was moved was that I realized for the first time in a long while of writing about seemingly intractable problems that you could do something. Right? It didn't take, these are kids who come in 5th grade and they are, when I say they're the 30th percentile, we're measuring them against a pretty dismal percentile, right? They're coming from the worst part of New York City. To be in the 30th percentile in the Bronx is not a very good thing. And we're willing to be, and we do it in 4 years. And you watch them in class, and you know they've been there since 7:30 in the morning, and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and they're still bright-eyed. And you watch them, and you listen to the kids, and you ask the kid, you ask a 13-year-old girl what her favorite subject is, and she says, math, and then it's a beautiful part. Math, of course. Math, of course, and a 13-year-old girl. Now, that's powerful because there is an immediacy to what's going on. And because it's not about some pie-in-the-sky thing. It's happening on the ground to people who you can look at and touch and talk to. And there aren't enough of those kinds of stories. And unless we have a kind of portfolio of those kinds of stories, which we can go and tell to places that are far worse off than even the South Bronx, and certainly in the Twin Cities, we're not going to make headway. And that can be, one way to think of one more reason to add urgency to your task here is that you can develop some really powerful stories here. Why? Because you've got to succeed. Right? This is a wealthy community with a powerful and motivated group of people who can really make something happen and then go on the road with that story and take it to places like New Orleans where there aren't nearly the same degree of resources and committed people and opportunities for easy. The guy at the academy, the principal, was talking about easy wins. Right? You look first for easy wins, and there's something to that. Right? And that's, I think, that would be how I would start on that more difficult task. Oh.
Here's a softball. Who will be president in 2008?
I'm kidding. I don't understand American politics, and the longer I'm here, the less I understand. So,
my question, my earlier when you're also the executive director for the Minnesota State Council on Latino Affairs, and I really appreciate your story and how you opened it with the example of California and what Hispanics in America experienced in the 1930s. It's very fascinating to me because I myself am a transplant to the Midwest. I'm originally from the Southwest of Texas. And Hispanics have already achieved that status in Texas that the Italians and the Irish, I believe, that you had mentioned earlier. And so the perception of Hispanics here in the Midwest is somewhat different, specifically in Minnesota. How long do you think, or in your opinion, what has the community have to embrace, or how do we have to move forward in which to elevate or have social mobility among Hispanic Americans here in Minnesota?
Mm-hmm. Well, this is part of what we're, when we talk about these, the subject of this report is precisely that. And I think it is about understanding that there has to be partnership. I came back to that word a couple of times because it's a really important one. The objection, I think, from many people to these kinds of programs is they don't think of them as partnerships. They think they're one way. They think it's all about the state giving, right? Hand out. And I think it's very important for us to make it clear that groups rise in partnership with the disadvantaged rise in partnership with the advantaged. You have given an opportunity and they seize it. And once we make it clear that both sides contribute to success, I think it's much easier for the rest of society to understand what they have to do, what their expectations should be of those involved, and to appreciate and to kind of become complicit in the social mobility of groups like Hispanics. I also think, the other thing I started by telling a story from Mexico in California in the 1930s. We should spend more time reading history because there's an awful lot to be learned from the history of other immigrant groups in this country. Because we have this fantasy that says that the ways of European immigrants who came to this country made it overnight. They didn't. It took 2, 3, 4 generations. And maybe it says that our expectations of more recent immigrants are unfair. That we have erased the true story of how long it takes and how hard it is to make it as a group, and how much persistence some of those other groups have. And so those would be my thoughts on that.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gladwell, for coming and talking to us. I've worked mostly as a librarian and in the nonprofit sector, and I'm wondering, so often it seems really intractable problems that we have are part of large institutions, and how a lot of these very quick changes often don't seem to catch these kind of endemic bugs that you wrote so eloquently about in The Tipping Point. So can you talk a little bit maybe about people you've met or types of leadership that you've seen people exercising that can help institutions to change?
Another good question. I guess I would say that one of the things that's really interesting to me about in observing contemporary trends in social change is how active the private sector has been in recent years, and how I feel like the conscience of the wealthy in this country has been awoken in recent years in a way that's very, very heartwarming. And heartwarming for two reasons. One is that they have developed a sense of responsibility for what happens to the rest of us, and two, because they have really important skills that they can bring to bear on this process. That to me is even more important than the first issue, and that is private sector leaders know something the rest of us don't. They don't know everything, right? There's some things they can't do, but there are other things they do very well. And one of the things they do very well is setting clear goals and pursuing them in an efficient and expeditious manner. And that is an incredibly important skill set for the kinds of issues that we're talking about. We need that kind of thinking. If you go and spend time with the Gates Foundation or any of these foundations, you will get a